The dog stopped in the middle of the busy shelter corridor and would not go forward. His handler tugged the leash, gently, and the German shepherd planted all 4 feet and turned his head toward a sound the man hadn't noticed yet. An old woman's voice, 2 rooms down, asking the front desk whether they took donations of hand-knit blankets for the kennels. The dog's ears came up, his whole body changed, and then he made a sound the handler had never once heard him make in 3 years together. A high, broken, desperate whine, pulling toward that voice with everything in him. The old woman came around the corner with her arms full of blankets, saw the dog, and went absolutely still. "Rex," she whispered, and then, her voice breaking, "My son trained that dog." The man holding the leash said nothing yet. He had learned a long time ago that the first thing you do is watch, but his heart was already pounding, because he knew that name, and he knew it should have been impossible. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. If this story moves you, please subscribe and stay until the very end. What you're about to hear will restore your faith in the people who are still out there, quietly paying attention. Let's see how far this journey takes us together. His name was Cole Hayes, and he was 42 years old, built broad through the shoulders and chest the way men stay built when discipline has long outlived the reason for it. His dark hair had gone gray at the temples, cropped close out of habit. A thin scar traced the line of his jaw and disappeared under his collar. The kind of mark a man stops explaining after the 10th time. But it was the eyes people noticed and then looked away from. Cold gray, restless, the eyes of someone who never truly stopped scanning rooms, exits, and the hands of strangers without asking permission, and then, having measured, let you be. He moved through the world with the permanent stillness of a man who had nothing left to prove. Not aggression, its opposite. He was not unfriendly by nature. Life had simply sanded down the parts of him that used to speak first. He watched more than he talked, and when he finally did move, he moved all at once, the way still water becomes a flood. Helmand had taken friends. The years after had taken the illusion that peace meant quiet. Now Cole lived in the narrow space between discipline and distance, in a quiet town in the Tennessee hills where nobody knew his name, which was exactly how he'd wanted it. Cole had served 13 years in the Marine Corps, the last 8 as a military working dog handler with 2 tours in Helmand Province and 1 in Anbar. He'd left after a roadside blast outside Marjah killed the sergeant beside him and put enough metal in his hip that the surgeon spent 5 hours deciding what to leave. The medical discharge had come with a folded flag for another man's mother and a limp that woke him on cold mornings. He had carried more men than he could comfortably count, and he had come home to a country that thanked him in airports and forgot him on every road in between. What he carried was simple and heavy. He had spent 13 years standing between people who couldn't protect themselves and whatever wanted to hurt them, and then the Corps had told him he was finished, and he had never worked out what a man like him was supposed to do with a life that no longer needed him. So he'd taken a place in the Tennessee hills and volunteered at the county animal shelter, working with the hard-case dogs the staff couldn't reach, because at least a man could finish that. The dog at the end of his leash had been one of those hard cases, a stray with no chip and no history, found half-starved on a rural road 2 years back, too disciplined and too haunted to be anyone's lost pet. Cole had recognized something in him the day they met, and had taken him home, and had never quite stopped wondering where a dog like that had come from. The German shepherd was named Rex, though Cole hadn't named him that. The dog had simply answered to it. The first day, when Cole tried it among others, the way a man answers to a name he's had all his life. He was 8 years old now, 90 pounds of black and rich amber, his coat darkened along the spine and across both ears, his body built like something assembled for a single purpose. His left ear carried a clean notch, where shrapnel had passed through it on a road in a country he could not name and Cole could only guess at, an inch from ending him. He moved with the clean, controlled confidence of a trained canine who had long ago learned the difference between noise and threat, and he wasted nothing. No motion, no sound, no attention that wasn't earned. Rex had been Cole's shadow for 2 years, and in that time Cole had pieced together part of the story from the dog himself. The hand signals Rex already knew, the way he cleared a doorway, the way he flinched from certain sounds and stood guard against others. This was a war dog, a trained military working dog who had, somehow, ended up a starving stray on a Tennessee back road with no record anywhere that Cole could find. Rex was routine, warning system, witness, and in the lonelier corners of the last few years, the closest thing Cole had let himself call family. And now, in this corridor, the dog was straining toward an old woman's voice and making a sound that came from somewhere deeper than training, from grief and from recognition, and from a homecoming 2 years and half a world in the making. The town was called Hollow Creek, set in the wooded ridges of eastern Tennessee where the hills folded green and blue into the distance, and the small towns sat in the valleys between them. That morning the early light came soft through the high windows of the county shelter, the smell of clean concrete and kibble and wet dog in the air, the particular hopeful sadness of a place full of animals waiting to be claimed. It was a good shelter run by good people, and there was no cruelty in this story's beginning, only the long, quiet ache of things lost and the small daily miracle of things found. But Cole had learned that even in kind places, the truth of how a creature came to be lost could hide an injustice waiting to be uncovered, and the story of how a decorated war dog became a starving stray was a story someone, somewhere, owed an accounting for. The figure whose failure lay behind it all was not present that morning, but he had a name, a contractor named Wade Vance, who ran a private K9 logistics and retirement outfit that the military paid to handle the transport and rehoming of working dogs leaving service. The Vance Company had the contracts and the clean-looking paperwork and a reputation no one had thought to question. Wade had learned that consequences were for other people, and that a dog could not file a complaint. What Cole would come to learn was that the Vance outfit had been collecting full government fees to transport and properly rehome retired military, working dogs, and then, to pocket the difference, simply dumping some of them off the books in rural counties far from anyone who'd known them. Rex had not been lost. Rex had been thrown away by a man paid handsomely to bring him home. What people knew about the Vance K9 Company was that it had the federal contracts and filed its reports on time. What no one had connected was the quiet scatter of unaccounted-for war dogs turning up as strays across 3 states, each one a line item Wade Vance had been paid to honor and hadn't. What stood in the way of anyone catching it was that these were animals, with no voice and no advocate, and that the paperwork said every dog had been successively placed. You cannot cross-examine a dog. That was the whole design of it. And so a Gold Star family 3 counties over had been told, 2 years before, that their fallen son's beloved war dog had died in transport, because a dead dog generates no questions, and a dumped one was cheaper than an honest delivery. The old woman was named Eleanor Briggs, 73 years old, and she wore a grief that had become part of how she stood. Her son, Sergeant Daniel Briggs, had been a Marine dog handler, Cole's own kind, killed in action overseas 3 years before. Daniel had trained and deployed with a German shepherd named Rex, had written home about him in every letter, had called the dog his brother. After Daniel was killed, Eleanor had begun the long fight to adopt her son's dog, to bring Rex home as the last living piece of her boy, and partway through that fight she had been told, by the Vance Company, that Rex had died during the transport home. She had grieved her son and then grieved his dog, and she came to this shelter every week now with hand-knit blankets for animals she could not save, because it was the only way she had left to be near the thing her son had loved. She did not complain. She had buried too much to have complaint left in her. She carried herself with dignity first. She knitted blankets for shelter kennels at 73 because love had to go somewhere. She came in quietly, asked politely, and never spoke of her son to strangers. The contrast was the whole injustice in a single image. A Gold Star mother who had been told her hero son's dog was dead, bringing comfort to other lost animals, while the very dog she'd mourned stood 10 feet away, alive, straining toward the sound of the voice he had been waiting 2 years to hear again. Cole saw the recognition hit the dog first, the planted feet, the lifted ears, the broken whine he'd never heard in 3 years. Then he saw the old woman drop her blankets and go white, and heard her say the name Rex, and then my son trained that dog, and the floor seemed to shift under him. Because Cole knew that name, he knew, from the dog's own training and the scraps of history he'd chased, that Rex had belonged to a fallen Marine handler named Briggs, a name Cole had found and lost in dead-end record searches more than once. He went very quiet, the way he used to go quiet right before everything happened at once. He did not let go of the leash, but he loosened it, and Rex crossed the last 10 feet to Eleanor Briggs and pressed his whole head into her hands, shaking, and the old woman folded down over the dog and made a sound that was equal parts a sob and her dead son's name. They told me he died. Eleanor wept into the dog's fur. They told me Rex died coming home 3 years ago. They told me, ma'am, Cole said gently. crouching beside them, his own voice not entirely steady. "I found this dog starving on a road 2 years ago. No chip, no record. He came right to me when I said that name." He put a hand on Rex's trembling back. "He didn't die. Somebody told you he did. And I'd very much like to know who." Wade Vance did not back down, because men like Wade Vance never back down from a thing they've built their money on. Over the days that followed, Cole learned the shape of it. He didn't accuse anyone at first, he documented. He had Rex's microchip rescanned and found, beneath the surface where a cheap scanner missed it, the faint trace of a military registry tattoo inside the notched ear. He pulled the thread of the Vance contract through the veteran networks he knew, and he learned the truth, piece by ugly piece, that the Vance K9 company had been paid in full to transport Sergeant Briggs's dog to his mother, had reported the dog dead, and had instead dumped a healthy, decorated war dog on a rural road to save the cost of the delivery, and that Rex was not the only one. There were others. There was a pattern. There were Gold Star families across 3 states who'd been handed the same lie. The ally arrived in the form of a woman named Carol Reyes, a former employee of the Vance company who'd quit in disgust 2 years back and still lived in the region, and who heard a Marine was asking questions about a war dog that had come back from the dead. "You're the one who found the Briggs dog," she said. It wasn't a question. She'd kept copies of the transport manifests and the rehoming reports before she left. Proof of the dogs marked deceased in transit or successfully placed who had been quietly abandoned instead. Everyone a fee collected and a duty betrayed. She'd sat on it for 2 years, afraid and unsure who'd believe her about dogs. She gave Cole a name, a Department of Defense investigator who handled contractor fraud, and a veterans legal organization that did not care how powerful Wade Vance thought he was. Rex understood in his way, before the humans had finished. He would not leave Eleanor Briggs's side now. Rode to her small house, slept against her door. The dog her son had loved come home at last to the mother her son had loved. And on every visit, he lay across her feet and watched the door, guarding the last of Daniel for both of them. Cole let him stay. For the first time in 3 years, Eleanor Briggs was not alone with her grief. Her son had sent something of himself home after all. Cole made the call to the DOD investigator and laid it out flat. The contractor fraud, the dogs reported dead and dumped instead, the fees collected, the manifests Carol Reyes had kept, the microchip and the registry tattoo proving Rex's identity beyond doubt. He didn't raise his voice. He'd been trained to brief command, and he briefed it. "You've done this before," the investigator said. "Seen enough of it," Cole said. Wade Vance moved to first, the way the powerful always do when they feel the ground shift. Word reached him that a stranger was asking about a Briggs dog that should have been a closed file, and Wade did what protected the contracts. He moved to have Rex declared an unidentifiable stray with no provable link to his company, leaning on a connection at the county to dispute the chip read, and he reached out to discredit Carol Reyes as a bitter ex-employee before any federal investigator took her seriously. He scheduled his denials and his paperwork for a window he assumed no one could close. He had not counted on a Marine who had already put the proof beyond his reach. Eleanor, told that the company was now claiming the dog couldn't be proven to be Rex at all, that the manifest said her son's dog had died, and that was the end of it, felt the old despair rise up to swallow the small miracle whole. For a moment she believed they would take even this from her, that the powerful always won, and a grieving old woman's word and a dog's recognition would never stand against a company's clean paperwork. She held Rex's face in her hands and prepared somehow to lose him a second time. But Cole was already there, because 13 years had taught a man named Cole Hayes to be in the room before the thing he was guarding against arrived. The confrontation came in a county office, where a representative of the Vance company had come with lawyers and manifests to dispute the dog's identity and close the matter, and where Cole walked in instead with the DOD investigator, the veteran's legal advocate, Carol Reyes, and Eleanor Briggs, with Rex at her side. Rex walked in and placed himself between Eleanor and the company's men, silent and immovable. 90 pounds of decision, amber eyes fixed on them with the steady, terrible patience of an animal that had been wronged and had come, at last, to see it answered. The room had gone quiet, not silent quiet, the kind of unnatural drop in sound that trained people notice immediately. Cole stepped forward, slow, and nobody moved. "You can put the manifests away," Cole said. "They're evidence now, not cover." The company's lead man started in smoothly. "That animal is an unidentified stray. Our records show the dog in question died in transit 3 years ago. This woman is mistaken. And you have no standing, mister." Vance's company holds federal contracts and an unblemished record. Who exactly do you think you are? Gunnery Sergeant Cole Hayes, Cole said, and his voice never rose. United States Marine Corps, 13 years, 3 deployments. 8 of those years I had exactly one job, handling dogs like this one, and standing between people who couldn't protect themselves and whoever wanted to hurt them. So no, I don't much care about Mr. Vance's unblemished record. He nodded at the old woman and the dog leaning against her. But I'll tell you who they are. That's Eleanor Briggs. Her son, Sergeant Daniel Briggs, United States Marine, trained this dog and died overseas with him as his brother. Your company was paid in full to bring this dog home to his mother. You reported him dead and dumped him on a road to save the cost of the trip. She grieved her son and then grieved his dog, and the dog was alive the whole time, starving in a county 3 hours away. You can't. This is the Department of Defense, the investigator said, stepping forward, investigating contract fraud against your company. We have this dog's microchip and his military registry tattoo. That's a positive identification, not a guess. We have the transport manifests Ms. Reyes kept, with the dogs your company marked deceased and abandoned instead. And we have the other families, the other Gold Star families you told the same lie. He set the folder down. Every dog you were paid to bring home and threw away instead is a federal charge. Starting with this one, the company man's composure cracked. Mr. Vance Will, this is, you can't prove intent. This isn't over, he tried, but the words came out smaller than the contracts had ever let them come. It was over. He just hadn't caught up to it yet. The investigation moved past that office and did not stop. Rex's identity was confirmed beyond any dispute. The manifest pulled, the pattern laid bare. Wade Vance's company lost its contracts within the month, and Wade himself was charged with multiple counts of federal contract fraud as the investigation traced every war dog he'd been paid to honor and discarded instead. The case building family by family, dog by dog, in front of the very officials who'd rubber-stamped his clean reports for years. A clerk near the door covered her mouth with her hand. Nobody spoke for a long time after that. Cole didn't watch the company's men gather their papers and go. He turned to Eleanor Briggs, who sat with both hands buried in the fur of the dog her son had loved, the dog she'd mourned and lost and found, her face wet and shining. He used to write me about this dog, Eleanor said. Every letter. Said Rex had his 6. Said if anything ever happened, Rex would find his way home. She looked up at Cole. I stopped believing that when they told me he'd died. I'm sorry, I stopped believing it. He did find his way home, ma'am, Cole said quietly, his hand on the old dog's notched ear beside hers. Took him 2 years and 3 counties and a man who happened to know the right name. But your son was right about him. They always are about their dogs. 8 months later, the late spring sun came down warm and golden over a small house on a green Tennessee ridge, a porch swing moving easy in the breeze and a flag with a single gold star hanging beside the door. Cole sat on the steps with a cup of coffee, his bad hip stretched out long, and Carol Reyes, who'd found peace at last in finally being believed, sat beside him with iced tea, and neither of them said much because they didn't need to. On the porch, a Gold Star mother sat in the swing with a framed photograph of her son in his dress blues on the table beside her, his arm around a younger Rex, and the old dog himself lay across her feet in the sun, gray in the muzzle now, home, his tail moving slow and easy across the boards. The investigation had reached far past one dog. Wade Vance's fraud unraveled into charges spanning years in 3 states, and the military moved to find and account for every working dog his company had been paid to rehome. Some, like Rex, recovered alive and returned to the families who'd mourned them. New oversight was written into the contracts, so it could not happen again. Other Gold Star families got the truth, and a few of them got the impossible gift Eleanor had, a dog they'd been told was dead, pressing its head back into their hands. Rex lived out his old age on that ridge with the mother of the man who'd trained him, and Eleanor Briggs, who had run out of things to love, had her son's brother sleeping at the foot of her bed. She still knitted blankets for the shelter, but she didn't go there alone and grieving anymore. She went with Cole, who'd become a fixture in her life, and sometimes with Rex riding in the truck, the old war dog visiting the place that had, by the grace of one stubborn recognition, given him back. Cole still worked the hard-case dogs at the shelter. The metal in his hip still woke him on cold mornings. But on the first Saturday of every month he drove up the ridge to the little house with the Gold Star flag, and an old woman raised a hand from the porch swing and an old dog thumped his tail against the boards, and a man who had spent years not knowing what he was for found he had finally, quietly, worked it out. Rex no longer ran to meet him. He was old now and content and home, but he lifted his gray head every time, and his tail never stopped the whole visit. Peace had arrived. The story was over. Sometimes miracles don't arrive as thunder from the sky. Sometimes they stop dead in a shelter corridor because a dog heard, across 2 years and half a world, the one voice he had never stopped waiting for. The world isn't saved by superheroes. It's saved by ordinary people who chase the truth that the powerful counted on no one bothering to chase, and by animals who carry a loyalty and a memory of love that human language has never been quite able to hold. God does not always give us back what we've buried, and the grief of a gold star mother is a weight no one should have to carry. But sometimes, in His mercy, a thing we were told was gone forever finds its way home down a long and impossible road. And sometimes it comes home on 4 legs, gray in the muzzle, remembering a name and a voice and a boy who promised it would. Eleanor Briggs grieved her son and then grieved his dog, and believed she had nothing of Daniel left but blankets she knitted for strangers' kennels. She was wrong. The miracle wasn't that a fraud was finally exposed, though it was. It was that a dog her son had trained to never leave a brother behind had refused, even after everything, to leave her behind, and had waited 2 long years for the chance to come home and prove it. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that love finds its way home, and that loyalty outlasts even the lies told over it. Leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. And tell us, have you ever been given back something you thought was lost forever, or recognized a love that time and distance couldn't erase? Your story may be the one that reminds another person to keep believing. And if you believe in stories of service, loyalty, and the quiet courage of ordinary people, please subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next one. May God bless you, protect your family, bring peace to your home, and watch over every Gold Star family who gave a son or a daughter, and every faithful war dog still trying, against all odds, to find his way home.